Then, in the next century, many more microorganisms related to foodborne diseases originally in relation to animal health were described, because there were a lot of animal diseases. But in certain cases later on, it was also found out that these organisms were not only infecting animals, but could also cause human diseases, like, for instance, Campylobacter and Listeria, two diseases that were first only described in animals, but by the end of the 20th century were also found in humans. So not only were new microorganisms found, but also new characteristics of microorganisms. There has been a large change in the antibiotic resistance of microorganisms during the years. In the 1950s, some microorganisms had resistance, but most of them were still susceptible to antibiotics. But with the use of many antibiotics, both in animal and human health, we can see a large increase in the resistance of microorganisms against these antibiotics. So we can see that food research did develop. Until the 1960s, food microbiology was often a very qualitative science. We looked at what happened, but we didn't really try to understand the governing principles. However, since 1960, it has really become a science of its own, including biochemistry, molecular biology, and all kinds of analytical methods to better understand what is going on. In much the same way, the food industry evolved from craftsmanship without much knowledge of what was going on, to a full-scale technological industry. We also see new developments in research, such as an improvement of traditional methods, the use of chromogenic media, and all kinds of colourful miniaturized biochemical methods that give us good insight in the behaviour of microorganisms. This is on top of all the developments in molecular microbiology, the genomics, transcriptomics, proteomics, and metabolomics that help us to better understand the behaviour and the characteristics of the microorganisms in our food. So again, looking at the food control, we can see that while it was the Romans who started including food-related rules in their civil law, many more rules were still being developed in the 20th century with the help of microbial testing. For example, pasteurization and sterilization became obligatory through legislation. In the 1960s, good manufacturing processes were described in our law. Hazards analyses critical control points was a method that was originally developed in 1970 to preserve the foods of astronauts going to the moon, but was later included into legislation in the European Union in 1993. 1980 saw the start of quantitative microbiology, and by 1995, quantitative risk assessment was developed. Now these methods are still being used to better set our current legislation. Of course, our society has also changed. For example, we used to eat more canned food, products with lots of additives, whereas now we eat more fresh food products. Generally, the consumers want meals that are fast to prepare and ready to eat. We see globalization and the quick transfer of raw materials from all parts of the world. Humans are also traveling much more, all of which enhances the distribution of microorganisms around our globe. We also see an increase in health products, for instance, probiotics. All these developments have occurred in the last century, yet sometimes we think that these health products are something only characteristic of today. But if we look into history again, we find an advert of a health drink from Wageningen about 100 years ago that could almost be promoting probiotic food products today. So certain things that we think are characteristic were sometimes developed earlier. So to summarize, food microbiology is an ancient field that started in prehistory. However, it constantly evolves by changes in the microbes, changes in our research, changes in our legislation, and changes in the consumption habits of the consumers. Look and wonder.